Everyone talks about making the best game ever, but no one talks about sustainability. That's why I'm here at Malmo, going to Nordic Games to find out what experienced and successful publishers, producers, and studios do different and give my opinion about it. I just listened to a talk done by Jennifer Corbett. She's the head of marketing of Midwest Games, a company that started as a publisher. They actually published my game, Dog Paradox, and now they are helping other publishers with indie studios, with their production systems, marketing, and other things. And she said very reassuring things compared to what I'm going to talk about in the conference. For example, understanding that only about 5% of indie studios get a publisher, and the importance of marketing quickly, not waiting until the last moment, not waiting until you already have your vertical slice out to start a community, to start gathering some people and gathering wish list. I found it very reassuring and very informative. And yeah, now I'm gonna grab myself a snack going around here pretty city, and then yeah, continue seeing other talks. All right, guys, I just listened to a panel about designing your game for a lifetime, not just the launch, which I found very interesting because that's also part of what makes a studio sustainable, right? That the games can keep on making some profit, people keep playing the game, people keep liking it way after you finish it while you're doing other games and compounding. And some of the most important things I heard them talk about in that panel was, I'm checking my notes a second because there was a bunch of different things. Well, one of them was that your early access is basically already your launch. It's not the same as when you're making a vertical slice or a demo. It's more like the most close thing you have to the full game. So that's what people are going to recognize the game as, and that's already it. So if you're planning on making a second launch for your game, that's not going to work as well if you already did an early access. And that's basically what happens to us with Dog Paradox. The early access was great in the beginning, but after a while, people already knew what the game was. And then when we made the full launch, it didn't really make an impact as we thought it would. So I think that's something very important to take into consideration. Another thing is that you should always follow what's fun for the players in your game. Maybe you have an idea of one thing you want to do for it, but in the end, if the players find another way of playing it and they're having fun, you should not force it out just because you have a vision, because that can kill your game instead of actually helping it out continue. And the last thing I found very interesting in that talk was the fact that the publishing kind of deals changed completely for the industry in the last years, because now studios kind of have a different idea of what they need, and it's not like they need the whole package anymore. Usually there's studios that have already a lot of expertise in specific things, and each one of them needs something different. Some of them need marketing, others need funding, others might need help with the production, but most of them don't need all the package, which made publishing kind of different nowadays. And that's why many publishers are changing to more of a shadow publishing model or publishing as a service, where they just give either the full package or part of the package if that's what they need. And I just remember there was one more thing I heard in the panel that was interesting, and that was kind of this, like the idea that you can also game design your way to a positive community. So if your game has already this networking effect that can make the community want to play it already, it helps you not having to build so much of a huge audience to only marketing, but through the game itself. That's not something you can apply to all games, but in some games, just a small tweak might be what it needs. For example, studios like Landfall, they add this mechanics where they can change what's happening in the game through the chat of a stream. So when people are watching the game, someone is streaming it, and then one of the developers of the game writes something in the chat, suddenly the game changes. That's already adding something without adding or changing too much in the game, that's basically giving it more marketing and more of a network effect directly. And of course, the more direct examples are games where people play together and invite their friends. So all of these things made me think that it is much more possible, and there's much more things I can learn of on the path of making a studio sustainable. And well, I'm gonna keep figuring out more things about that. So see you around. All right, guys, I just went out of another talk. This one was made by Hans von Knut. This guy has made a ton of different games, and he had to talk about 20 things you should not do to be able to survive as an indie studio. And even though there were many things I didn't completely agree on, probably just because of the way he framed them, not because they were different, I actually found many very important insights in this talk. One of them is like failing to plan is planning to fail, but however, also too much planning can just kill your studio. This is something that I always say, like, planning is everything, but the plan is nothing. You should always have your full plan for your studio and your games, but also learn how to adapt to the things that change, not just stick to it if it doesn't make any sense to stick to it, right? Then don't change what will make you need to do many other things. Like, there's sometimes when you're doing the production of your game, there's something that's not working, and your first instinct is just to change it directly. The problem is that most of the time when you do that, it might change other things too, and it might break other things that are already working. So instead of changing it right away, you should first check what needs to be changed, if you can cut it completely or do something else. And then instead of wasting so much time, you just make that change. Then he also said, don't grow your team if you can't have a stable income, and keep less than 10 people. Otherwise, you will be dependent on sales and not on making games. So if your team is too big and your game is not making enough money for that, you're going to switch to being making sales all the time on your games instead of making new ones and enjoying the process. So your team should stay as small as it can. And I think this is completely true. Sometimes you don't even need a big team. You can be just a couple of people, hire some other people to help you with the rest of the game, and then continue just with a couple of people you had in the beginning until you start your next game. That way you can keep your way being sustainable. Then we have look for investment only when you don't need it. This one makes so much sense. So if you're already in the point where you need investment, it's probably too late. It takes too long. As in the talk from before, I said that I heard like 5% of all indie studios are the ones that get a publisher. So that means it's probably too much of a risk to focus on trying to get investment. It's better just to do it when you don't really need it. So if it comes, it's just an extra push, but not as some method to survive. If you're going to be making sales, learning to make sales, clean and like direct kind of cold sales, that takes way too long. It takes about 2 years for you to actually make them work. Before people know you enough, before you understand the whole process. So you should not focus on that to try to make your studio survive. You should focus more on making more games. than just focusing on the sales one by one, which I think it's completely true. And the last thing that he said that I also found really, really interesting is don't chase clean code before production. This is something I predicate all the time. I mean, you have to focus first on a quick and dirty prototype so you can really check that your game is good enough. Otherwise, you make the most clean code ever and then the game doesn't work and you have to change it and you'll just waste time. But of course, after you have something that's working, then you should definitely focus on having a clean code. Yeah, and that's it from the talk. Well, guys, I'm exhausted for today. Gonna continue with this tomorrow. Just arrived to the train station so I can move on to where I'm staying. Talk to you guys tomorrow. All right, guys, I'm here at the second day of Nordic Games. Today I listened to a panel talking about niche games and how to build a sustainable studio with a niche game. And I found the information actually very important for any kind of studio. They talked a lot about that plan that you have from the beginning of the game till the end, how to approach feedback in a way that you don't take it personal, because especially if you're making a game that is unknown to everyone, the mechanics and how it should be, you're going to get a lot of different feedback, and it might be that some of your ideas are not that great. And not taking it personal and actually focusing on what the players are saying and finding a path, it's what's going to get you to have a better game. Also, the fact that you should be testing in each stage of your development, starting with the idea itself and telling people, hey, what do you think about this idea that I have, and seeing if people resonate with that. Then in your prototype, showing the visuals of the game and seeing if people understand or feel something about it, even if they're just a prototype visual. And also the experience itself, so you can always validate that new niche idea that you're having. And then, sorry, there's a bus passing by. Yeah. And then, besides all those cases of what you should do through the process of the game, also the idea of preparing and thinking about your next game before you finish the other one. In the process, you're already preparing that next one. So, because you're thinking not about having a masterpiece of a game at the beginning, but having a master plan so you can keep on being sustainable. That was all very assuring for what I'm going to be talking about that's very similar. And well, I'm going to keep checking out what I learned from the event. See ya. All right, guys, just finished the second day. After the panel that I listened last, I had a couple of meetings in the meeting room. I met with Peter Saito, who is a producer with a ton of years of experience working with games as small as 5 people up to 500 people. And I got a lot of insights on production production insights that I was not sure about before, but that now I have clearly understood. For example, the importance of leads in teams that are not necessarily the producer, but an extra part of the team that is working with the team, that understands the specifics of the team. For example, if it's a art team, a art lead or a tech lead, etc., that can work interconnectedly with the other teams when the full team is bigger than 12, 13 people. So the dependencies inside of the studio are not that big. So when one team is working on something, for example, I don't know, the mechanics, and then they depend on something from the art to be able to finish, by having these leads working together between one team and the other and communicating, it's easier to for them to have things done on time and not have to wait for the others. And this way they can deal with dependencies much faster. If you have only a team of developers, programmers, then they might get a bottleneck if they need to wait for the audio engineer to finish something that's part of a mechanic, for example. But if you have teams that are built mixed up between audio engineer, programmer, artist, and like this, and they're all working on the same mechanics per se, you're not going to be stuck waiting for deliveries from the other teams for the teams to be able to continue, which I found really interesting. Apologize, guys, that part of the video where I was talking about this got corrupted. So I'm just telling you right now what I did the rest of that day. After that, I had a meeting with Martin van Spieten. With him, I learned a ton about the importance of understanding the emotions and kind of culture inside of your own company and how that can affect everything. It could even make it break if it's not done correctly. It was amazing to meet this guy as well, since he is also business coach focused on trying to make studios stay sustainable. Then I listened to a panel about the power balance, if it changed forever between the publishers and the developers, ways that now publishers are working. It used to be basically that the only path was getting a publisher that would get you financial support and support in every other thing they could. For example, marketing and other different parts not related with development. But nowadays, there's studios that just need one part and not the other. So you can find now every kind of publisher. And the question was mostly related to if now, like, it's not going to be anymore that a publisher gives money or it's more difficult and that it's not the same anymore, but it seems more like actually now there's just more alternatives of different kind of publishers for each kind of thing. And sometimes it's better just to look for one thing that is what you really need and everything else do it yourself. Anyways, that was basically everything I did on that day. And then I went and continue looking around Malmo. So yeah, let's go and check out now what I did on the next day. All right, guys, I'm almost done with this day. And today I also learned a ton so far. I went to the talk from Peter Saito, who I met yesterday, and I talked with him. And in his talk, I understood much better what he meant in terms of how the production cannot be that completely um, closed. In sense of if you have many different teams and you need the teams to deliver together. If you have a close production, you're just going to have them delivering and not really focusing on the actual problems that they might have. And one team can somehow hinder the other when that other team needs to wait for the delivery from another one. But if you have something like a blob structure where all the teams are kind of combined with leads that help the team understand what they have to do, kind of people that work with them and also serve as coaches that understand the team inside, and mixing the groups, for example, having the audio engineer inside of the mechanics group, because that way they can work together on finishing the full mechanics with the audio included instead of having them separate and having one team wait for the other to finish the mechanics so they can add the audio or vice versa and all those kind of stuff. This was very, very interesting and important, I would say, and it's something that I'm going to probably be talking about in the next days. Also, I had a couple of different studios reach out to me, and I talked with the people from them, and I realized that it's very difficult to make some people understand the value that there is on making a community before your game comes out and trying to keep your game as small as possible so your budget is enough. A lot of studios just get so emotionally attached that they just focus on making the game as long as they want just because that's the idea they had in their heads, and they don't pay too much attention to community until it's basically too late, while the community is the one that can prove that the game is actually good. Which leads me to the other talk I had personally with Timothy Campbell, who actually after did his own speech, and I also watched it, and he is a strategist focused precisely on this, on making studios be able to be sustainable in the means of making each game not only having success, like people following the game before it comes out so it has more success when it comes out, but having people that actually care about the game, because wish list might sometimes not be enough. They don't all translate into actual sales. While if the community that's created through the wish list is also engaging with the games, people that are true fans, by having a Discord channel, by talking to them, by understanding the data that comes out of what they say, not just listening specifically to what they say directly, but understanding what it means and tweaking your game with the feedback you get from that. That way, your game is going to be better, and every person that is in that group, it's has more chances of being actual clients later buying the game. And I also listened to the talk get from Martin van Swieten. I talked with him yesterday, and I also learned a lot about paying attention inside of your studio, not only of the production and how this whole structure is working, but also about the emotions related to each one of the people working on it, and how to keep that in balance by checking on the persons and paying attention to those parts of the studio. Because if that's not on check, the studio can break from the inside as well. I learned a ton from today as well. And well, the event is almost over, so I'm going to enjoy a little bit more of networking around. And yeah, that's all for today. Tomorrow I finally give my speech, so let's see how that goes. Bye. All right, guys. Now it's my turn to give some value to all these people that have been giving me so much value in the last days in the event. I'm on my way there to give my pitch. Most of the people are not going to be there, unfortunately. Only about a quarter of the people are left, because the last day is kind of more of a learning day more than a business day. And yeah, so it's going to be a little bit different, the dynamic. But there's a lot of people that told me they're going to be there because we talked before. So I'm really excited to see what they think and to see what you think once you see it in the video. Let's go. Most indie studios never release their first game. And those that do, for the most part, never get to release a second one. They're trapped in this cycle of thinking that, well, I'm back at the hostel right now. After my presentation, I stayed and saw the presentation of Leslie Alfredson, which was very interesting, talking about how to pitch your game. Something that I think that could be applied not only for trying to get funding or a specific thing from a publisher, but also even when you're gonna show your game to different players so they get convinced to play your game. In the end, from the whole event, I learned a ton. I got a lot of things I want to talk about and things that I learned that I want to try out. It was a really great event. I'm gonna go to sleep and tomorrow go back to Hamburg. That's it from this video. Thank you for watching.